let's turn to our USDB items. Sorry, we're a few minutes behind, but Schools for the Deaf and the Blind. I think we have first from Dr. Tanner, information report, if you want to come up and join us.
Is it possible to share my screen?
Let's see.
I just need the code, but it's someone's sharing right now. Oh, goodness. All right. It's not finding the network. Just a second. Try it again. Not connecting it. It's not recognizing the internet right now. Closest. 10. Oh, 10. What are we doing here? Just share. I guess I need to check. They'll take that one first. I'd like to share more than that, but we'll see. All right. I think I'm connected. Okay. Are you okay if I go ahead? There he is. Make sure everybody's here. Hello, everyone. I am Michelle Tanner. I'm the superintendent of the School for the Deaf at USDB, and I have the pleasure of addressing you today to talk about one of our campus programs. Since you are the governing board for our school, we thought it'd be prudent and talked with the board leadership about presenting on the different campus and the different programs that we have so you understand what it is you are governing. So today I'm going to start out, as you can see, we have the Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind, and there are the two main schools, the School for the Deaf and the School for the Blind. And I'm respectively over the School for the Deaf. Here you see in these little circles other topics that I can address with you later at another time, but today I'm going to focus on a campus program that we have. There are 4 campus programs for the School for the Deaf. There is the Kenneth Burdett School of the Deaf, the Southern Utah School of the Deaf, and the Elizabeth DeLong School of the Deaf, which is in Springville, and the Jean Mousseau School of the Deaf, which is in Salt Lake City. I'm going to focus on the Kenneth Burdett School. We often call this KBS. KBS is located in Ogden, and it was our original school. It started in 1884, was actually in Salt Lake City, but when we achieved statehood, we got land in Ogden, and so it was moved to Ogden. So that's where it has been. It serves preschool through post-high, so that's up to age 22. There is a residential program. It's our only residential program is on the Ogden campus. We have those other programs don't have that component, but there is a component of residential up in Ogden for both the School for the Deaf and the Blind. And there is a lot of they call it pre-ETS, that means pre-employment transition services that we do in this particular program. And so I'm going to start here with our self-contained classrooms. So in order to attend one of our schools at the School for the Deaf, in all of the campuses, you have to have a diagnosed hearing loss. We often have students that have a hearing loss and other concomitant disability. But in the campus in Ogden, there is a larger number of students with multiple disabilities in comparison to my other campuses. They have to qualify through an IEP process or a 504 process to attend this program. And the content that we're teaching is Utah State Core. It's aligned with Utah State Core, but we also have to address their IEP individual education needs, so that when we're teaching, we keep both of those components in the forefront of our minds. In this program, there are approximately 5 students per class. There are 61 students currently being served there. There's a director, a secretary, there are 10 teachers and 9 paraprofessionals that are serving in the self-contained classrooms. And you see some pictures of some of the students up on the screen. This is a preschool class. I have the pleasure of reading to them every Monday morning. They're really cute. The next one, let me talk about the residential programs. So on the screen, you have an image of one of our cottages. We have 4 cottages up there that can serve, each cottage can have up to 12 children in it. There are 2 beds to a room. And we've split those cottages so that there are 2 for the deaf, 2 for the blind. And between those 2, one is for the girls, one is for the boys. And currently on my side of it, there are 9 students that reside in these cottages, in one of the cottages. We have a student life coordinator who is the person who plans, orchestrates all the activities that have to have, make sure we're hitting IEP goals that are happening in the evening. That is their responsibility. And then we have student life technicians who actually implement what's happened. They conduct the activities. The student life coordinator is often there, but they are also there overnight for supervision, making sure everything's going as planned, as it should be. The thing that's unique about our residential program in comparison to other deaf schools is that our students we focus solely on students 14 and above in our cottage programs. There are other programs that do the younger grades. We do not do that here in Utah. One of the beauties is that we have other campuses so the children can get their services without being taken away from their homes and from their families. So at age 14, they're more apt to be able to handle that. And these are more like dorms. And as I said, we focus on independent living skills, cooking, cleaning, making sure they know how to take care of themselves. These are students that we anticipate can do it if we get some more supports for them. The other thing that we talked about was pre-ETS. Today you will see a request to approve a remodel of our activity center. So I thought maybe it'd be good to also show you a little bit about our activity center. The images on the screen right now is what we hope it to look like. I will show you some of what it currently looks like. So in the top left is a small classroom that's used for teaching space that we use for smaller groups and smaller teaching moments. To the right is the picture of the main open area. The door to your left is where it goes into that classroom. Main open area where often the students are located. We usually have tables set up there, chairs. Off to the left there is a kitchen area for teaching, and then at the bottom you see that angle from a different angle of what's going on. We use this for the pre-ETS skills and for day programming and night programming. There's often social activities that go on for the students. We have, dances, cooking activities. There are different parties and things that they might have, or large groups, because the cottages, although they're great, we need a space for them to gather together separate from their bedrooms, where they can get together and learn, where we can put the girls and the boys there. Sometimes the School for the Deaf and the School for the Blind is there. So if you are looking at what I've got on the screen here is up in the left, that's what it currently looks like. I'm not sure what the hole was for up there. Never quite figured that out. There's the lighting up at the activity center has been really bad, and a lot of the remodeling is going to be changing out the lighting, and that's extremely crucial for deaf and blind students. Lighting, you can understand why that would be applicable to someone who has a vision loss, but for the deaf, you have to be able to see very well because if the lighting's off, you can't see clearly what someone's signing to you. Well, the lighting has been really hard, and also the space itself. It's been a while. So that is the classroom, what it would look like currently and how we'd like to alter it. Then if I go over here to the open space, you can see that some of the changes, oh, it's taken a minute. You guys are not, there it is. So you can see the first thing that's very difficult for my deaf students is the lighting behind there, the two great big windows. You would think more light would help. It actually is not, because you have that's the main teaching spot, and you have a light behind you. And then there's a little pass-through right there to try and gather students around so they can cook off to your left here. It's been really difficult. You'll notice in our proposed plans, we're opening that up so that students can see better. The lighting there's lighting underneath all the beams that we would need to do. We're closing off the space behind it, and of course replacing the flooring. That's kind of a mishmash of different flooring through there. I'm going to go back to the one down here. This is not the exact image of what the same spot, but you can see the kitchen is very small and tight, and so we often will have in there 10, 15 kids trying to learn about how to cook. And so we've got to remodel that space and open it up to give some space for people to actually be able to stand in one location and be able to see on the other side, because you must be able to see the cooking and you must be able to see the signing that's occurring. And we're going to open up some of the space back here to do that. So that is that piece of the presentation. I'm going to show a little video clip so you can learn just a little bit about the Ogden campus. It takes 4 minutes. Oh, sorry.
The first time I saw this school, I could not believe how close it is to the mountains.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's not projecting.
You can walk outside our campus and the mountains are right in your face. Throughout the different seasons of the year, fall, winter, spring, summer, they look drastically different. That is one of the things that people first notice when they visit our campus here. This building itself, where we're standing, is part of our elementary section. All of our high school classes are located in a different building just behind us here and even closer to the mountain range. We have an indoor pool. We have cottages where our students have an opportunity to stay on campus overnight during the week, either because they live long distance or they are in need of increased social opportunities. For our cottage program students, they tend to come in either Sunday evening or Monday morning. Our students who stay in the cottages tend to be older, high school range. More than 85% of our staff members here at the Kenneth Burdett School of the Deaf are deaf themselves. They have personal experiences knowing what it's like growing up being deaf. And with that knowledge in mind, those experiences in mind, we look to help the kids feel more comfortable, to feel more involved and engaged, and feel more ready to express themselves instead of holding experiences in. And this is where you see kids be a lot happier. You see staff members a lot happier, everybody working together. That really helps foster growth. And it's not just academic growth. When parents come to the Kenneth Burdett School of the Deaf for their first time, and they check out this wonderful place, the first thing that usually astounds them is that it's not what they expected to see. And the reason is because they're not sure typically what their students are capable of doing. So for example, oftentimes you don't see deaf people working, deaf adults in the environment having a job, such as myself. I'm the director of the school. They see that and they're like, oh, this is a deaf director, he's running the school. This is a possibility. And then we have all the teachers who are signing and working with the kids, working with the students. And most of all, the parents love being able to see the students. They love seeing the students and how comfortable they are and being able to just step right in. For example, we have a student with cochlear implants who didn't feel comfortable wearing them because of peer attention. Once they came in and saw other kids that had cochlear implants as well, they realized, hey, I'm not the only student like this. I want to be a part of everyone else. And it just blew the parents away when they're able to see their own students smile and laugh and do things that they maybe have never seen their child do before or at home. Not only that, the most important thing of all is that the students find out who they really are. Once they know themselves, truly know themselves, the glow in their faces and the eagerness to learn makes all of this work worthwhile. Absolutely.
And that is my presentation about the Kenneth Burdett School of the Deaf, and I'd love to entertain questions.
Yes, that was fascinating. I loved that. I have a couple of questions. First of all, about what's the occupancy rate of the students that are in the cottages?
Right now, there are 10, but it varies. We last year had 20, so it goes
so
back and
it's
forth.
up and down. And then when a student stays there, do they stay for a week, a month, a semester, a year? How does that work?
They usually stay for the entire school year. So they'll come up on a Sunday night, they'll stay throughout the week, and then the last day, school day, they ride home on a bus. And we have drop-off points where parents meet us. And we've had parents come from the middle of the state, drop their kids. I often get that question, can I send my little 5-year-old up there too? So I'm like, that's not a good idea.
But
Yeah,
it's a
I
week
could
at a
see for
time.
that social time in
Yeah.
a teenager's life, that would be so helpful. Thank
They
you
do
so
like
much.
it.
Yeah, appreciate that.
There you go. Okay. All right. If there's nothing further for Dr. Tanner, let's turn to Carl, MP Finance Director. We have an action item on the agenda that was referenced by Dr. Tanner, the Ogden Campus Activity Center contract review and approval.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairs, and board members. The contract you have before you is, as Dr. Tanner just referred to, is a contract to remodel the activity center. We've gone through the state procurement process. The contract was issued to Northern Construction. They're on the state contract list. We were working with DFCM. They have a group called Gordian that goes out and gets the bid and manages the contract. And so we're in compliance with all of state procurement. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, board members, any questions? We got Member Davis.
It's not really a question, but I was thinking about this, I was talking this with superintendent, but, so our students are living there on campus Monday through Friday and then going home, but there are a lot of camps that kids from really all over the state come in the summer. And then they use the same cottages, and so to me, in my mind, especially seeing, the presentation was so helpful. Thank you. It feels like there's a real need in the summer when we're bringing a bunch of kids up there for all kinds of experiences in the summer to have gathering opportunities there as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? This is an action item, so we could entertain a motion if anybody is so inclined, unless there is anything further from Carl.
No, nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we've got Member Davis and Member Bogus with
Okay,
lights.
I don't have the language moved up, but I move that we approve. I gotta pull up the language. Should have done that beforehand. I move that we approve the contract for the facility.
Okay, so the motion is, and I think this was incorporated, to approve the contract, which is to remodel the Ogden Campus Activity Center. That's been seconded. Any discussion to that motion? Member Bogus, was your?
Oh, I have no
you were in
discussion.
line?
I just
Okay.
thought the 750 pages was riveting. That's my only comment. Riveting reading, riveting.
We had some thorough backup, and we greatly appreciate that. Okay, nothing further. If we let's vote, and I think we will go ahead and break in the new random system, which will probably be used at random. So let's start with Member Lear, and let's see, are we having Are we tracking? This may make it slightly harder, but it'll be more fun. Member Lear. We don't have to do it this way. We're going to do it occasionally because I received this as a gift. So, all right. So Member Lear, any opposition to using this system? I think we're okay. Member Lear's not here. We'll come back to her. Vice Chair Hart, need to come. This random selection has a funny way of finding those who are. That's right. Hopefully nobody gets stoned here. All right. Member Klein. Member Green. Yes. Member Norton. Yes. Member Bogus. Yes. Member Booth. Yes. Member Davis.
Yes.
Member Earl.
Yes.
Member Wood. Yes. Member Carey. Yes. Member Straight. Yes. Member Moss is a yes. Member Hymas. Yes. Member Reel. Yes. Yes. We don't have Member Lear or Member Hart, so that motion passes unanimously with 13 in favor and 2 absent. All right, thank you. Let's see. Feel free. All right, let's move back to the discussion of the enrichment program, USDB. Superintendent Coleman.
Thank you. You'll be relieved to hear we don't have any more items to vote on today. So board members, that's one example. As you know, you approved previously our budget for the year. Part of that was our carry forward money for one-time projects. This was already budgeted and money approved by you, but because of procurement, everything, for those of you that are new, everything over $100,000, you need to also approve the contract when the work's about to start too. So we appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, the enrichment program. As I was talking with the chair and the vice chairs this last month, one of the things we discussed was maybe it would be good to review the USDB enrichment program, because we throw it in a lot here and there. We talk about things we're doing, but for those who are new on the board, and actually it's probably a good review for everybody, we wanted to just go through this with you and let you see it so you know for sure what we're talking about in the future when it comes up. So on the next slide, I have, the way I've envisioned this since I started here was we really have 3 major buckets. This is not technically right, and Carl, of course, gives you the reports with every little detail of everything, but generally there are 3 buckets of funding that we use to do everything that we do. The big one is our operational funding, mostly funded by the legislature, and then some federal funds and other things like that, and that's 97, almost 98% of our budget, right? And that's how we pay everyone and maintain our facilities and do all that stuff. The other bucket you'll hear is what we call our enrichment funds. All of that money comes from the land trust that was set aside for deaf and blind kids at the time of statehood. And it's very similar to what you know as the school land trust, right? With community councils and all of that. And I'll be talking about the differences in how that money's approved in just a minute. And then we have a little tiny bit of money that comes in from donations. That's discretionary. And in the past, it all came to us. And when Superintendent Jones came on to USDB, we started talking about maybe creating an education foundation like all the other districts have. And then we followed through on that, and we actually have a functioning foundation with volunteers, and it's a separate group that's private, but they're just there to fund things we need. Generally, they help us with equipment for the blind and the deaf kids that's needed, and so that offsets a small portion of our costs. And so today I want to focus on this middle one, which is our enrichment funds, and it's a very unique kind of awesome program actually, and I don't know what we'd do if we didn't have it. So if you can go to the next slide, Superintendent. This is just a visual, and you'll see it's the same exact process that the school land trust goes through, but fortunately USDB gets to manage this. The land grants or the land that was set aside at statehood for the deaf and the blind generate money, and that money, a portion of that is allocated each year for these enrichment programs, and that is run through USDB. Next slide. This is what we do each year, we have a list of enrichment funds that you approve. Ultimately, you approve it. And on this actual slideshow in your packet, you can click on any of these items at your leisure, and if you want to dig a little deeper into what those items actually are. And the associate superintendents have a detailed sheet, kind of a white paper for each one of those things that describes what it is. Next one. Yeah. So a question we got from the legislature last year, they were asking us, what is this? and how does it actually work in the full scope of USDB? And so this slide came directly from their presentation. And basically, they said, how do we spend these funds? They're spent by USDB on statewide enrichment programs according to our guidelines, which I'll show you in just a second, which were approved by the board. And all the students with significant vision or hearing loss and their families are eligible to participate. So when we talk about land grant trust funds and enrichment funds, it's the same thing. We sometimes use those terms interchangeably, and so you'll notice that in our meetings. Okay. Here is the actual policy that was adopted and approved by the board. We were already operating according to these principles, have been since the time I was appointed as a superintendent in 2013, but we actually codified it in 2017 because we started getting some questions from people, like from the public. Well, why are students going on trips, international study abroad trips with this? Why is that happening? That's taxpayer money. Not actually. and so we put all of this in writing so anyone could understand why this is so unique. If you, let's see, yeah, if you go to this one, this is really where most of the questions come about. And I don't usually show a slide and read every word, but I think we will just read through these because this is probably the crux of most of the questions that you'll get. The approved uses and limitations. Number 2.1, of course, they're for the deaf and blind kids, deaf-blind or deaf-blind, deaf-blind or deaf-blind. The enrichment programs available to any child regardless of their affiliation with USDB. So we do a lot of work on trying to get the word out through districts that we have all these summer camps and other opportunities for learning that are not necessarily connected just to our campus programs or even the kids we serve in outreach. They could be in the large districts. In fact, many of them are. The large districts that don't even use USDB services at all. It's for any child or their families that qualify because of their sensory disability. 2.3 is very important. These funds are not intended for routine operations, facility maintenance, or general school programs at USDB. This is not the regular school stuff. And a limited part can be used for staffing, but it's not meant to be given for teacher raises or to put more paraprofessionals in the classrooms or anything like that. We have to staff the summer camps and we have to staff, the activities that we go on. But other than that, this is not meant for their normal jobs. And then generally accepted uses, we actually put this list in there. The board wanted that at the time we approved this back in 2017 because it actually answered a lot of questions that people had. Specialized equipment definitely is usable. Maintenance of the Deaf Mentor program. Deaf mentors are not required on people's IEPs, but that's a best practice in deaf education to have a teacher of the deaf go into the homes, we're talking about PIP, the babies 0 to 3, and then have a deaf mentor assigned to that family who's actually a deaf person. It's not a certified teacher. They just go in and they work with that family and teach them how life can be for their child. And the blind actually has a much smaller mentor program too, which is part of the enrichment funds, but a little bit different than the deaf mentor program, which is significant. The next item is, I'll pull it up here so I can just keep talking without, even if we don't have video. Okay, the next item is support for teaching the expanded core curriculum for the blind school. And you've heard recently how Superintendent Patton has been really thoughtfully integrating with the districts to support them for all the needs of the blind children in the state. Support for staff, facilities, and other resources that provide unique learning experiences outside of the normal school stuff. Travel abroad and other unique academic and co-curricular travel activities. So this one, you heard last month, for example, that our students went to, I think it was Alabama, for a basketball tournament. so they could compete against the other deaf schools in the country. And where our students previously, deaf or blind, would compete with the regular schools, and we are part of UHSAA, so we compete in the 1A, smallest division around the state. But when they compete with other deaf schools, they see how it can be. And for example, their football program last year, that startup was a lot of money, and it was great. But our kids played a lot of schools in the state, but when they went and traveled and played a deaf school, the deaf school didn't hold back because, oh, we don't want to beat up on the deaf kids so badly. And they clobbered our kids. They just, because they've had a much more established football program, right? And the other schools, they're great coaches, great people, and the kids themselves, they just kind of took it easy on us. And that was actually not bad for the first few games, so we learned how to play football. But when the deaf school came and just destroyed us, our kids are like, oh, that's what we need to be like, you see? And competition with other deaf schools in the country helps them actually excel in a lot of ways. And so that's one example of travel. We go to space camps, and a lot of our trips are paid for by other groups and institutions, but when they're not, our kids never miss out on traveling. If they go to Gallaudet University for the Battle of the Books, or they do other things like that. And so and then the whole study abroad, that's not a junket for them to just go out of the country. Like this year, for example, the School for the Deaf is going to India, and the School for the Blind has gone to places like Scotland and Italy and Australia. They actually go there, and they've taught the kids, our kids have taught the kids in their blind schools how things work here. And they get out, I'll tell you one story. They dropped off our kids on one side of Sydney, Australia, the blind kids, and said, get back to the hotel in 2 hours. You're on your own. And they had to advocate for themselves, ask people in their funny accents how they get places, use their technology on their phones, and use public transit. And our supervisors were actually about 40 feet behind them the whole time. But as far as they knew, they got back to the hotel and they're like, I can do anything in this world. It doesn't matter that I can't see. I can really accomplish anything. And so these are the kinds of things that we actually, before we started our first international trip, I called all of the universities in the state and said, do you have any record ever of any blind or deaf students using your student study abroad opportunities? And they looked into it, did research, and got back to me. There's no record ever of any student having that kind of opportunity in our state. So this is one of the few times ours will ever get to, and it's pretty awesome. And then subscriptions and resources. We have music therapy that works really well with our kids, and other things that help the families. Sports and extracurricular activities. You noticed on our fee schedule that you approve every year, our kids don't have any fees except for a deposit for international travel, and I think we're required to have a driver's ed fee by law. But other than that, they don't have to pay for anything. They can participate in any sport, any activity at no cost because of these land grant funds that were set up, and then any other programmatic uses that are consistent with the code, that we can do that too. If you go to the next slide, the process of approval is, this is where our advisory council comes into it. Obviously, we're notified every year by the Children's Trust section how much money we have, and currently, the last few years, it's generated about $950, almost $1 million a year. So that's what we budget each year. It built up for a while before we really established the program. So we had, for several years, we've been able to spend a little more than that while we spend down our carry forward. But now we're close to that. USDB gathers input from families, from our teachers, and from our administrators on what's going well, other things they might like to see. And every year we kind of look at this with fresh eyes. And then we bring the proposal to a subcommittee of the advisory council that really does a deep dive into every program, asks hard questions. Then they go back to our advisory council. When the advisory council has a recommendation and approves that, then we bring it to the board as part of our springtime budget process. And then the board ultimately is the approvers of our funding here. Next slide. Historically, this is what I mentioned. We had a kind of a surplus built up, and so this is the revenue for several years exceeded our expenses. And then we started narrowing down how we use this, and we've been more effective now. So that's a chart of the historical revenue and expenses. And then the role of the advisory council, we haven't really talked a lot about this, but I thought it would be a good little side note today. The advisory council, the whole job, and they're made up of people that you have designated in, it used to be in state code, and then it was moved just to board rule, and it was kept the same. They are meant to advise you and us as an administration on the needs of students who are deaf, blind, or deafblind. And we're required to have 2 parents who are parents of deaf children, 2 who are parents of blind children, and 2 who are parents of deaf-blind children. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 members who are deaf, 2 members who are blind, and 2 members who are deaf-blind or parents of deaf-blind. And then we also have a couple other parents that are on the council as well. And so in 2 years ago, at the beginning of 2021, we actually, the board actually approved, with the blessing of the State Trust Lands Advisory Council, approved the advisory council to serve as our community council as well. And so in addition to the trust land funds, we get a little tiny bit of traditional land trust funds like the other schools get. We get like $26,000 a year. And so we had a really hard time assembling a community council like normal schools because we're not one location, one geographic group. It's from all over the state, and we just frankly did not have a lot of participation. And it was more work to do that than actually to get the $25,000. And so we approached Paula Plant here and the board and made sure that it was all good. And the board approved in 2009, I think it was 2021. It was in June that the board voted to approve that. And so now the advisory council, at about the same time they do all of our enrichment programs, they also approve our little tiny bit of school land trust funds as well. This is just for your information. I won't go through it all, but it's in your packet in case you had more questions about the advisory council. This is how they work. They advise the board on just about anything you would want. And there have been times with special projects that the board has said, will you check with the advisory council before we make a decision on this and give us some input from them? And usually we run our board items through the advisory council the previous month, so they're aware of it, and we can bring any feedback from them to you. And of course, they can talk to you directly. We also have in the past had an annual meeting where the whole board and the advisory council meet together with us to kind of review our strategic plans, and you get to interact with them one-on-one, and they're just tremendous people from the deaf and the blind communities. They're super great, and they have lived experience, so they really know how to advise us well. And so just at the end of this presentation, I have several links to our policies that you can look at, dig in, and the difference between our donated funds and our foundation is really a threshold of $5,000. If we get 30 or 40 bucks from someone in their will to one of our schools, we just manage that. But if it's more than 5,000, we run all that through the foundation, and then they get to distribute that. So that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Superintendent. Member Davis has a light on.
I should know the answer to this question, but can you help me understand, is every mentor in the parent, or is every employee in the parent-infant program a mentor, and is all the money paid for out of the enrichment funds, or is there some operational costs that do the basic PIP skills, and then are they different people that are the mentors, or the same people and they're just paid part of their salary out of the other pot?
Great question. They're different people. So the PIP program are teachers and their vehicles that they use and everything. It's part of our regular school program, so to speak. The deaf mentors are just deaf individuals that are assigned to families that desire that are interested in American Sign Language and their child potentially becoming part of the deaf community. And so they're kind of like a student aid or something like that, but they just go out and on a caseload, kind of like the teachers, and just it's sort of the human side without, just showing them how deaf life is.
Okay. May I follow up?
Yeah.
This is actually not really a follow-up. It's more of a bit of commentary, but I just find it ironic. Thank you for that answer. It was really helpful. That we're by law saying, our students don't have to pay for the fees for these other things, but they need to pay for driver's ed and to get, training to be a driver's license. And really, when you think about it, that's the one experience that is going to propel them to greater independence economically also. And I'm thinking of a student that I visited with at one of your graduations who I know didn't have, and especially students that are on the cusp that might not qualify for a waiver, but also can't afford to pay the fee. So, I mean, if there's anything we should look at adjusting, I think maybe at some point we want to advocate for that.
And we really do have enough here that no one would ever go without something like that. So you have to approve a driver's ed fee on your fee schedule.
Even if they don't qualify for a fee waiver?
Yeah, I mean, if a parent came to us, we would work with them. We have the
Okay.
foundation, the donated funds and things like that that are not, they're much more discretionary. So
Okay.
nobody will ever go without in our
So then the
school.
wider issue of the rest of the schools.
You bet.
All right, any other comments or questions? I'll just make a comment. We've been working with USDB on a few things, and we have felt the need to have a couple of board members that are more deeply involved in USDB and become sort of, I guess, honorary visiting members of the advisory committee. And so we had a chance to go out and visit with the leadership at USDB and asked Leanne Wood, Member Wood, to be one of those members, to be attending the advisory group, and a member of leadership will be doing that as well. And so that we, have some kind of ongoing discussion that goes beyond these meetings and has a bit of a liaison opportunity. So we really appreciate that opportunity and look forward to Member Wood serving there and having that perspective to join that of our USDB leadership when they report on board meetings. So thank you very much for the information, and I think that turns it back to Carl Empey for the budget update.
Okay, great. The financial reports for the first 7 months that ended January 31st. We continue to be financially solvent. We got plenty of monies on hand to pay our bills. The revenue inflows from the state and from your office totaled, and I'm just going to round up, $30.4 million. Our expenses were $27.1 million, leaving us a surplus year-to-date of $3.2 million. And a lot of that is going to be covering payroll. Every pay period, every 2 weeks, we spend about $1.6 million on our payroll. So the couple months we have coming up, we'll have 3 pay periods. So the state takes our annual distribution, they divide it by 12, and we get 1/12 every single month. So we get a little bit in advance every month for those bigger months. The number of campus students we have on the campus are 373, and you can see the growth trend line month to month on the chart. The total number of students receiving services, 2,176, and then the total services being provided to the students totaled 4,858. As Superintendent Coleman just mentioned, the enrichment fund, the land grant trust fund balance is $417,808. The donated funds are $257,581, and the Education Foundation balance rounding up is $1.1 million. And then the chart behind this, the 2 pages, the budget status report that has a lot of green on it for St. Patrick's Day coming up. It's always green, by the way. It just shows all the supporting detail for the numbers that are summarized on that financial report. The next report is the enrichment funds projects that Superintendent Coleman just referenced and walked through our policy. Of the $1.5 million that was approved by you last year, we've spent 440, well, if I add in the community council, we've spent 460, is it 3,379? I'm going to bring my glasses next month. And so leaving us quite a balance to spend between now and the end of the year. So, Mr. Chair, that is my financial report. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Any board member questions? I apologize if I missed this, but this, do you have a light? Member Bogus, well, come back to me.
To be fair and sporting, I just turned it on. So my PDF in Civic Clerk doesn't have that center page, and I'm not certain why. If you could just email it to me, maybe.
Sure.
I would love, because I love your hyperlinks. I'm always really thankful for those. Thank you.
We'll do that this afternoon.
It is there. Enrichment funds.
Anybody have a,
We'll be happy to send that out to everybody. Oh, that's fine.
all right, any other comments, questions? Thank you for that report, and
You're
back
welcome.
to superintendent for the superintendent's report.
Thank
Wrap
you.
up.
Okay, just an update on the legislature. We had our day on the Hill on Monday, the 27th, the first day of the last week. And actually, it went a lot better than I thought. I just thought this is going to be the worst time ever. It's the last week of the session, but fortunately it was on Monday and everyone was still in a good mood. And so we had the whole rotunda, and we actually had a great time. A lot of representatives and senators came down to visit. Any of our students that were there with us, we had them write a letter to their elected officials first, so they would be aware that they were there, and we had a really great experience, and so that's always nice. Update on the building projects. We the auditors from the legislative, the Office of Legislative OLAG. What is that? Office of Legislative and General. Auditor General. There you go. The OLAG auditors who have been working with us are getting close to wrapping up their process. So the timeline is that the week of March 20th, they're going to share the draft report with Chair Moss, Vice Chair Hart, Chair Norton of the Finance Committee, myself, the two associate superintendents, and your auditor, Debbie Davis. And then we will have like a week to review that and prepare any responses that we might have. The next week, March 27th, we will have an exit conference with the OLAG auditors to provide our feedback directly to them. Monday, April 3rd is actually the deadline for us to submit that in writing, our official response. And then Wednesday, April 12th, the report will be released to the Legislative Audit Subcommittee at the state capitol during their meeting there. And the auditors, the auditors will present the report to the subcommittee first, the OLAG auditors, and then we, meaning Chair Moss and your auditor, will provide any response. And so it's nice to me that this is going to wrap up mid-April, so we can kind of move ahead with that. Upcoming out-of-state travel this next month, I believe spring break, the deaf school will be going to India. Finally, I think we financed that trip like the year before COVID, and so it's been a credit, and we finally get to use it for our students to go, so that's really nice. And I don't know that we have any, we also have a group going to Philadelphia that is not going to India on their trip. Any travel from the blind school, Susan, that you're aware of?
Not until June.
Okay.
So
we'll
not
let you know
until
at
June.
that time.
Yeah.
And then any additional items from the associate superintendents? That's all I have for my superintendent report. Dr. Tanner?
Yeah, I'd love to just report out what happened this past month. We had a lot of students out doing activities, and they performed very well. Our middle school math team from JMS placed third place in a competition in New York with other schools for the deaf. So we're pretty proud about that. We also had a drone competition where they went to Alabama. I think this was the one in Texas. Anyway, they placed 2nd, 6th, and 13th. So all of them have gone and advanced on, and now they get to go to, the next one is in Mississippi at a national level. That was the regional competitions. Pretty excited about that. That is such an amazing thing to watch. I would love to be a kid learning with drones right now. I mean, they take those things through hoops and then if you get the really big scale, they go to arenas and you sit in fancy chairs. But really cool. Our robotics teams, we competed against 33 teams, and that was the one that was in Alabama. That is, we placed 9th in skills and 5th in the teams rounds. We had some students go to Gallaudet University in Washington. And, well, actually, they submitted things to them. And we had one of our students win second place for middle school ASL presentation, one for the middle school handshake competition, which is doing poetry and maintaining the same hand shape. It's a type of poetry in American Sign Language. They had the same student achieved second place for a written essay. We had another student who also won for ASL and writing category. Then we had a student compete in the BYU Cybersecurity Capture the Flag competition. That is this state against hearing students, all the other students. He came in first place for all the sixth graders in the entire state, and he's our student. He's deaf, and he competed against the hearing kids. Pretty proud of him. We've got things coming up. We're getting ready for our summer camps. That's a huge event, as you can see. We got lots of summer camps. We try to meet the needs of all students of all ability levels. Some students can't go out of their local area, some can. And so we have different opportunities, and the parents get to select. So some of the summer camps, a lot of reading, language, camps for the younger children, a lot of preschool camps, family camps. Then the high school students, the only way I can get them out of their basement in the summertime is to do something fun. And so we are going to Moab to doing some adventure camps. We've got a basketball camp we're partnering with Arizona. And then NTID from Rochester is coming out and helping us for 3 weeks for a STEM camp, where we're going to do coding, drones, 3D printing, VEX robotics. And that's going to be pretty exciting. So those are the camps that we've got going, and we're excited about our next meeting. I'll be in India with the students, and we also have some students that go in Philadelphia. These are the students who, for whatever reason, cannot travel out of the country. Some are medical needs, some are immigration needs, and so we want them to have the opportunity to learn and to grow as well. So they're going to learn American history in Philadelphia. So those are the things we've got coming up.
And I will be very quick. You did receive an email yesterday as far as as far as upcoming events. That's an email that goes out to 100% of our teachers of the visually impaired that are both associated with USDB and associated with our larger districts. And that's a hope that gets out to parents as well. So I'm going to send that to you guys every month so you're aware of, you have it documented as far as what is happening. If you ever want to join us, we would love to have, you can click on that link and there's a file of everything that's going on within the next 5 to 6 months. So all the activities. But just barely this last month, we had what was called the Deaf Blind Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C., and we met with one of the staff members of Senator Mitt Romney. When I say we, I wasn't there, but we had some students there with 2 teachers of the visually impaired, and they had a fantastic experience in talking about the services that they need and the services that they need as they grow and as they become adults. And so they felt very well received. So that was such a great experience to learn about some political science and American government. And then we also had our Braille Challenge, and the Braille Challenge is not a USDB, it's a statewide event that all kids from all districts come to. It was held at the DSBVI, which is the Division of Services for Blind Visually Impaired, so we collaborate with them. That was very successful. We had about, I want to say 25 to 30 kids. We always are wanting more, but we had a good participation, and it's always a really great day, again, giving those kids some competitive type of an aspect. I just wanted to say, when we're talking about like what we need as the School for the Blind, I would say our number one need still is our teacher shortage, which you guys know that, and so I feel like I'm a broken record. But we have teachers with huge caseloads, and we're just always trying to make sure that we are providing them the support that's needed so that they can meet the needs on IEP minutes and also their own mental health. And then we have a hard time filling those positions as they become vacant. So again, I didn't want to be like as far as this is what's a problem, but I do want you to understand that these are still constant issues that we face on a daily basis. Teachers, paraeducators, interveners, that I would say that for the School for the Blind, that's our number one concern on a daily basis.
May I add to that, too?
Please.
I think that's important. You guys have asked us also to not just tell you the wonderful things we're doing, which we're doing many wonderful things, but what are the things we're struggling with. And I echo with her, Susan Patton, the staffing needs are a big deal. We don't have a huge turnover in our school. It's the thing is there's such highly specialized positions. Finding them is really hard. So a position can be vacant for a long time because there's not somebody with the skill set we need. I also would like to say on the deaf school side, the thing I'm getting questions about a lot right now is audiology needs. Many of the audiologists that in the districts that have audiologists, not most charter schools don't, a lot of the small districts do not have an audiologist, and we assist. But these are now the larger districts that are reaching out to us and saying, our audiologist is retiring. Not sure we want to be, we have enough for a full-time position, but it works to have the school for the deaf and the blind have it, because then we can say, okay, this school needs it and this school needs it, and this person has a full-time job, and we can spread them out. So I'm getting a lot of requests for audiology needs. And then the thing that's pressing upon my mind, which is pressing upon the minds of most of the teachers in the state and in the country, is social emotional learning needs. It's really pivotal for my deaf students, since they don't have oftentimes the ability to communicate with their parents about their social emotional needs to a level that really needs to be addressed, that we have to sometimes step in on that. And so those are very unique. We're working as a team to try and, in alignment with the board rule that talks about what that curriculum is supposed to look like, we're developing this specific for deaf and hard of hearing children, because a lot of the options and curriculum that's out there is not accessible to my students, nor does it often meet the very unique needs of a deaf and hard of hearing child. So we're working on that. We're convening groups and trying to get that together, and our psych team is pretty ambitious to be able to put this out there and hopefully share it with other deaf schools. So those are the current concerns that I have on the deaf school side.
Thank you, thank you. Wonderful things happening. We do have some lights, so I have a question or comment, but I'll come back to that. We have first, I believe, Vice Chair Earl, and then several others in line.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your presentations. It's interesting, I got to go to the Open Shaw building and see the educators come in. That's kind of like their drop-off place and then go out again. So to watch the engagement of the educators and having that be their home base, so to speak, but then they facilitate out and then come back and then facilitate out again and do their work there. So it's just grateful for that space that they're able to use there. I just encourage board members, if there's something you want to know about our schools of the deaf and blind, will you let leadership know so that we can get that on an agenda so that you can get the information you're looking for, some clarifications or that kind of a thing. I appreciate the in-depth information here, so that we can get questions, answers that we have, so that when we have constituents or other individuals reach out to us, we've got a clear vision and we can share that information with them. And then most of all, thank you so much for the time that you guys put in, and especially, there's so many moving parts, right? And I'm always amazed at a program that I'm not familiar with or I haven't heard of before that's been ongoing for years and been used as resources for families and students. And I just appreciate the time and effort that is put in and on behalf of the children in the state of Utah. So thank you.
Member Hart, or we have somebody let up as public, but I don't know that we have any.
Well, that's them.
Is that you guys? Okay, sometimes that's, no. Sometimes it's online, but I don't think we have any board members online. So, all right, Member Hart then.
Yeah, I was interested in staffing concerns. Do we as a board need to be thinking of or supporting grow your own staffing? Are there things that you're already doing in this area that we can help with or support? I'm just not sure, outside of growing your own, I'm not sure how to help with that staffing, but we may need to look at some innovative ways of getting more personnel. The other question I had, just as a clarification, is it positions that you have that are remaining unfilled, or is it positions that you need that you haven't necessarily found where you can carve it out of the budget?
So if I can answer that, if I may.
Please.
And I'm speaking for the blind school. Michelle can speak for the deaf school. So because we have completely actually different needs, because the blind school is more of an outreach program, deaf school is more of a campus program. So both as far as being able to fill the positions. We just don't have a lot of graduates coming out of the universities as far as with teachers of the visually impaired. And as Michelle said, it requires a great deal of expertise. They have to have a teaching license, special education license with a teacher of the visually impaired endorsement or a deaf-blind endorsement on top of that. So most of our teachers have master's degrees, and we support and there are programs that we can support that them as far as getting funding to continue their education. But another problem is that we don't have, like right now I've got a new position, or not a new position, but a position that needs to be filled that has been vacant this entire year for a teacher of the visually impaired in outreach. But the other thing is there's absolutely no room for a teacher to, either on campus or outreach, for a teacher to go on maternity leave or to have any other issue, because we don't have the staff to be able to scramble around. And our teachers are wonderful people, and they sacrifice, I want to say, I feel like I'm saying this all the time to our directors, you have to let these teachers know they cannot sacrifice their health and their families. And they are. They're sacrificing so that they can get things brailled for students on time, so they can make sure that their students are receiving FAPE, even though we're outreach and it's the district's responsibility. And the districts understand that, but they don't have the capacity either. So it's just a lot of different variables. But I think that we have both the need for more teachers and then filling those teachers. That's probably our biggest. And then also looking at maybe modifying a program and possibly looking at, instead of having teachers, but maybe having highly qualified paraeducators that are also filling in to teach some Braille, to be more consistent in. Anyway, there's lots of things, and we're looking at. We've talked several times, really weekly at least, as far as what can we do to meet the needs of these kids and the families and the LEAs.
I just want to add to that.
Yes, please, Michelle.
I echo exactly what Superintendent Patton said, and it's true. And as far as options, we are taking advantage of the Grow Your Own teacher grant. We have some aides that are working towards that. Most of our staff have to have a bachelor's degree, so it's a little different than the typical Grow Your Own because they need to have a master's. And then we also are working to develop an Apple program for the deaf school and the blind school to create our own. Because as we've stated before in this meeting, there is only one viable option right now within the state to create an educator of the deaf. Our main path that we had in the past was Utah State University, and that program has been folded, and they're trying to get it up and running. It will not be the same. It will be a different type of program. They will have to. This new program that they're developing will be. They have to be a paraprofessional at USDB in order to even get into that program. It will not entertain people outside of that sphere. And so we have to look outside of the state to get our applicants.
I'm sorry, who made the decision that it had to be within USDB?
That was Utah State University.
Utah
So
State.
you have to work as a paraprofessional working with deaf and hard of hearing children, work with the School for the Deaf, we have to do all the placement and all that kind of stuff. So we collaborate with them. We're happy to do that.
Sure.
If that'll get us something. It's not going to be, I graduated from Utah State, and I wasn't an aide at the time, so it would have eliminated someone else who was outside of our system. So it limits the number.
Thanks.
We've been visiting with other universities for a couple of years, just begging them to start a program, and that's a lot harder than it sounds to get done.
Yeah, so we're trying to do it within us, with the Apple program.
Okay, thank you. Member Bogus and then Davis.
I just have a brief question. I don't know to whom I should address it. Maybe it's Superintendent Coleman, maybe it's you. Do you guys have an extra duty schedule?
What you meaning for after-hours activities and things like that?
Well, just as you're talking about your teachers and recruitment, and I know that retention is not quite a thing, but sometimes it's like a $5,000 stipend to sponsor X, or do you have an extra duty schedule that accommodates that, or is that considered part of their teacher salary?
It's included in their teacher salary if they have extra duties, meaning like they do an extracurricular activity. The football coach is also my school counselor. We pay them out of the extracurricular funds for a stipend to complete those duties. So, and we have hard to fill stipends. So if there is a position that's extremely hard to fill, like in the rural parts of the state that are really hard to find, then we will do a hard-to-fill stipend as needed.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Member Davis.
I had Molly's exact same question, but just a tiny extension off of that. I know we lost the program at Utah State, and it was the only one that was giving us really what we needed. But what universities are giving us what we need in the area for our blind students? Which ones are currently doing that?
So the University of Utah is probably where we get the majority of our applicants. We also have several applicants coming out of northern Colorado. And the issue there is not, I mean, USDB has some scholarship money some limited scholarship money that they can use for that. But there's not the scholarship money or the grants that there is available at the University of Utah. We also we had job fairs, or we didn't have job fairs, but the universities had job fairs that we were participating in at Utah State, and at BYU and at UVU. So we're really recruiting. For the blind school, we're recruiting special education teachers that want to continue their education and get either a TVI or a deafblind endorsement. But I would say the University of Utah at this point in time is who we work with close, our closest one. But again, we are working with the northern Colorado as well. There's just not a lot of programs. Utah State has had one as well, as far as vision is concerned. So. Anyway, those are the two.
Okay, last quick follow-up. Do you feel Apple is probably going to be your best course of action at this point, pursuing that? Because that's what it sounds like to me.
Yes. And I say that I think
a lot of work.
It's going to I think it's kind of a wait and see for the School
Okay.
for the Blind. You know, for Apple, we need to be partnering with a university, which, and I think that's very doable, but I'm kind of waiting. And again, the School for the Deaf, School for the Blind have different needs. We do have the program at University of Utah and at Northern Colorado, so it's getting people into those programs too, and then anyway.
Okay.
So
But
I hope that
Dr.
answered.
Tanner, you're feeling yes.
Yeah, we're working with it. We're doing write-ups and what the curriculum's gonna look like and things like that. We're down the path. We're working on that. We gotta submit that and get that approved through the board staff here.
Thank you.
Member Booth, and then, yeah.
I was wondering what kind of a schedule are we on in terms of faculty and staff turnover? How close are some people getting to retirement? How much time do we have to solve these issues in terms of staffing and finding appropriate and qualified teachers before we're in trouble? I mean, if we're in trouble because of maternity leave, that's sounding pretty scary to me.
Well, I mean, I hate that I actually said maternity leave, because I was really using that. That's just first thing that popped into my mind, you know, as far as teachers that have to take some leave. But I would say that it's not necessarily a retirement, an attrition problem as far as retiring people and other people coming in. The problem is we just don't have people coming in. And so anybody that is leaving for various reasons, we don't have a pool of applicants to be able to fill that position. So what happens then is are those teachers that are currently working, whether they're classroom teachers or outreach teachers, they are getting more students, and so then it's harder for them to be able to meet the needs. And so it's really a problem that I don't know that we have all the answers for it. I think it's something that we've really got to be able to be collaborative on, because and we know that USDB is not the only problem, the only LEA that has a problem. We completely understand that. I think the difference with USDB than other LEAs is that we are very specialized, and so it's more difficult. I mean, if we're recruiting at BYU or University of Utah or Utah State, we're recruiting for special ed. And we're saying, here's the thing, though, you're going to need to have a vision endorsement with a master's degree. I mean, a vision endorsement would be fine, but master's degree is 9 credits more, 6 to 9 credits more. They're going to get a master's degree. That's kind of the problem. So they're like, ooh, maybe not USDB, or maybe not. And it's really more than just USDB. It's our districts that are hiring TVIs as well, because they're struggling as well. That was a very complex answer to your question.
And I agree with her. It's not so much attrition, because when a teacher commits to these fields, they pretty much stay for life. I mean, there's a strong commitment to be a deaf educator. There's to do that, and so they learn a new language often to teach my students, and so they want to be around the students that have that language, so they stick around. I've noticed that people that are leaving are people like this year. They want to stay in deaf education. They'll go to a deaf school across to another state, or a spouse gets a job. Military, that seems to happen often, where they move, their spouse moves, so they move with them. We have a few people that are up for retirement, but you know, it's mostly they're in the first 5 to 10 years of their career with us right now.
Okay.
They do stick around.
Let me just, one more thing. If we can keep them for 5 years, we've got lifers. The key is, and that's special education as a whole, if we can keep them those 5 years.
Light on, did we already get you? I see Member Wood, who hasn't weighed in yet.
You did get me. I was just gonna make, if we were finished here, I was gonna make a motion for a 5-minute recess.
Let's get Member Wood.
Just a quick question on your comment about the talking to someone who's in special ed. Is the compensation, does it increase to give them that desire, or really is this a heart thing where I want to go and help, you know, a special population? What drives these new teachers to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to commit that extra 9 credits, that extra?
I would say that it's more heart than it is compensation.
All right, thank you very much, and I think a 5-minute recess is in order, but let me just say thanks again for all the time and effort and all the experiences and opportunities you provide for these kids. And again, if board members want to go out, we had a great visit at the Openshaw Center. To see it in action, the things that we hear in these meetings is great. You know, there's a physicality to this. How do you deal with, you know, the challenges these kids have? How do you structure the environment? How do you move them through their day? What kind of enrichment opportunities? It was really fun to see that. I hadn't been out, so I encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. But thank you, and we'll take a 5-minute recess. We'll come back for consent. We do need to keep a hard 5 minutes. We got lunch at 12. We got a hard stop at 5. So board members, let's do 5 and then come back and move through consent quickly. Thanks.